Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, and business from the inside out. And today I'm welcoming to the show Karen Strack, and Karen is in Los Angeles, where it's Monday afternoon. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thanks for having me, Bea. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Me too. And we've been having quite the chat pre, and then I'm like, "You ready?" And you're like, "Yep, this is just a conversation. It's a Monday afternoon. It's Tuesday morning for me. We've just come off the back of Easter. How was your Easter?"
It was incredible. I went to Cancun, so it was quite nice.
Oh, how beautiful. Mexico.
I know. I know.
Great
A
weather.
little a little getaway, a little re-energize, a mother-daughter trip. So it was
Oh,
lovely.
oh, how nice. How nice. Yeah, we're heading into winter here, so not as it was still nice weather though. So yeah, I had a bit of mum and daughter time as well. Hung out with my parents and yeah, my mum, and so that was nice also. I'm going to introduce you. I'm going to share a bit about you, and I'm going to hand it over to you, and then we're going to start talking. So, Karen, you're the founder of Hazel's Gone Fishing. Really want to know how you came up with the business name Hazel's Gone Fishing. Absolutely love it. It's a boutique advisory and facilitation firm helping organizations align strategy, leadership, operations, and AI integration without, drumroll, losing the human care. It's all about the human care, isn't it? With
It is.
25 years plus across retail, real estate, and media, you've led transformation, growth, and operational improvement inside complex environments, always with a people first lens. And Karen, from what I understand, your work sits at the intersection of strategic planning, leadership development, change management, and practical AI adoption. The AI is just so fast at the moment. It's just wild. So I'm keen to get your thoughts on that from a business lens. You're also known for helping leaders cut through the noise, build stronger teams, and create cultures where accountability, clarity, and momentum can actually hold under pressure. Your philosophy is very simple and very be formless, if I may say so myself. Everything begins and ends with people. I'm all about the people also. Last but not least, when you booked in for the pod and I asked you what's one unique insight or lived experience when it comes to reshaping life, leadership, and or business, you said one of the biggest leadership lessons of my entire career is that life doesn't quieten down just because you're more experienced. In many ways, it gets fuller. The skill is a balance, is learning how to lead, work, and love from a place of intentional capacity. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, thanks for having me, Bea. I'm excited to be here.
No, thank
Let's
you.
start with Hazel's Gone Fishing. So, Hazel is my dog. I'm a passionate pet lover. And when I started my company, I, like many entrepreneurs and especially women, they seek advice from other people. And people were like, stay focused, deliver one or two things and be great at those one or two
Yeah.
things. And I couldn't do that. It just wasn't in me. Like my passion is a little of everything and
Same.
I have experience in that. So I didn't want to put myself in a box. And when I started to really think about what um, services I was going to provide. I happened to be deep sea fishing, and I was with 30 girls, 3-day boat trip out to the Pacific Ocean. People were catching all sorts of different things. And I thought to myself, that is exactly like what my business is. I want to be able to walk into an organization and help them, whatever it is, whether it's Six Sigma, Kaizen, whether it's finding OKRs or KPIs or upskilling their team or finding out that they want to scale their business, but we don't want to do it through human capital and we want to introduce AI adoption. And all of those pieces meant a lot to me. And I felt like because I'm so passionate about people, I could touch anything in the business, and I had the experience in order to do that. So I was like, "You know what? It's gonna be like Hazel's Gone Fishing, and, like, I'll throw a reel out into the ocean, and we'll see what comes back with the different organizations that I go forward with." So that's a little bit about the name, and I wish Hazel could come to work with me every day, but she's kind of a homebody and she doesn't like to go outside the house. So there you go. She's on my website. You can see a picture of her. She's a beautiful Bernese Mountain Dog.
Yeah. How old is she?
She's 5.
Oh, how cute. How cute. What a great
Yeah,
story. I want to dive into that a little bit in terms of
sure.
that, like you say, that a lot of You get a lot of advice when you start your own business, stay focused, focus on one thing. And I've really battled with that myself in terms of I like doing all different things. I'm formless in terms of like if I get stuck doing one thing, I get bored very easily. And so I need to be able to sink my teeth into complexity. And when there's various pieces that are really complex or going into a business and the problem's never the problem, and you pull out all these other things, it's a real, like you say, like forcing yourself to fit into a box. How have you done that in a way that's enabled you to get focused and then all grow your own business, like without getting, because there's a conversation now around multitasking and, being single task orientated. What's your view on all of that?
I think that when you go to help a company craft or refine their strategy, you're going to be touching all aspects of the business. I mean, there's no way you can do that without that, especially when we talk about transformation and we talk about things like your talent and upskilling and succession planning and your processes. So I do believe that, my philosophy is, or my approach is people, process, and operations.
Yeah.
So I always touch on all three of those. But in the end, it's the people. Like I can come up with a new process, we can identify what new KPIs you want, but if you don't have the right people in the right place to deliver that strategy, you won't make it very far. And I can talk to, a CEO a day in regards to what they believe the vision is, and then the minute I say to him, "So talk to me about your people and how they're actually, what problem are we actually solving for?" Because it's going to come back to the people. And it's very interesting because I would say it's a 50-50 mix of CEOs that really have a great idea of an understanding of where their team is, whether it's the C-suite, whether it's through their succession planning, and I think that that's a really big disconnect. And people have to be woven into everything you plan to do in your organization, no matter what.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. So then what about AI? Like from a team perspective, are you having these conversations with a lot of the businesses that you're working with, or is it something that's it's ticking away from me at all different times actually, where I'm thinking about people, then I'm thinking about the machine or the AI, and then how you put that team together. There's a whole new dynamic that's coming. What do you
Mhm.
what like how do you address that with the businesses that you work with? And even with your own business.
So I would say probably 3 years ago, all of my business comes from referrals. So I've never had to go out and plug my own business. People have worked with me. They knew I left kind of the corporate, job and started my own business. And so all of my businesses come from referrals. So about 3 years ago, I really started to pitch AI integration with organizations and also workshops. So I love to come in and do workshops. And so many of the companies that I was working with, they were like, "Yeah, no, we don't see that happening for us." And I would sit there in front of these CEOs and I would say to them like, "Your employees are using this. So
Yeah.
you better start protecting your data and have the right privacy and governance in place because they're using it and you're going to need to catch up." And in some cases, I had a couple of clients where it was actually the CEO saying, "We're doing this. And like, I need you to help me with the change management and adoption with the rest of the company." So, but I come at it from a perspective on if you're looking to scale and grow your business, let's not do it through human capital. Let's do it through a great place of integrating AI and teaching your people through upskilling them and understanding that that's going to be critical long term. Then I am a huge believer that AI is a thought partner. It does what you're not good at, especially if you're an individual contributor.
Yeah.
It gives you this ability to ask for feedback, all of these things that are so important. And I tell people I just worked with a client last week where we did a major department AI workshop. And I told the team, you won't be replaced with AI. You'll be replaced by someone who knows how to leverage AI.
Yeah.
So get on this boat because it's leaving.
Yeah, it's a really good point. You will be replaced with someone who's leveraging it. I think that if we're not leveraging it, we're going to be left behind very quickly. Like I don't know about you, but just this horse this year, the bolting, it is absolutely going super fast. I had a question for you around the human capital pool piece, and now it's completely slipped my mind. Don't you hate that when you have a specific question and then you lose your chain of thought? I want to cast. Let's cast way back to
Okay.
when you. What made you finally leave corporate to then start your own business? And you said that you should have started it a long time ago. What was the final click? Like, what made you? What was your final decision in the end?
I think that um I think I was concerned that it would take me too long to build the business and get back to a place financially. I am the breadwinner for my family, and I couldn't risk anything that had to do with my children. It was one thing to turn to my husband and say, like, hey, we need to pull back a little, or I'm going to dip into our savings. But I didn't want to jeopardize anything that had to do with my children in university, making sure that my commitment to them was that I got them through university debt free, and I needed to make sure that that had happened. And so I needed to ensure I had something stable, and my corporate job provided that to me. What I didn't recognize at the time, because I've always worked in a large corporation, was that the lack of flexibility, like I knew I was working a lot, but the true lack of flexibility, I could have hands down started my own business, and seeing how quickly I was able to take that trajectory to getting back to where I was within the corporate world financially, I could have done this 10 years ago, and it would have allowed me the opportunity to spend a lot more quality time with my children when they were at home
Yeah.
versus my husband being the stay-at-home person.
Yeah.
Yeah, big miss.
It's a big miss, but it isn't in a way. Like, I mean, in terms of, I think sometimes, we were talking about astrology pre-show. I also think that sometimes we have to go through these challenges, if you like, or have something staring at us in the face going, are you ready? When are you going to do this?
Right.
Versus looking back and going, gosh, I should have done that sooner. I have those conversations with myself at times. It doesn't really get me anywhere. So I have to just go, well, that was what it was. I had to go through that to now be able to do what I'm doing now. And like, look at you now. Like, your business is absolutely thriving. It's probably all that additional experience you've had to then take this to what your business is doing today. The fact that you don't even have two tastes in your business, it's just referrals. That was the question I was thinking. It was human capital. That was the question I wanted to talk to you about as well, as part of this, in terms of how important relationships are when it comes to then going from what you did from corporate then into your own business. It's much easier what you know, and who you know than what you know, isn't it? It's much easier, don't you think?
It is, hands down. I think just to add to your comment about, you can't really look back and go, "Oh, I should have done this 10 years ago." I do look at something, and we started this conversation by saying, "How was your Easter?" And I did this mother-daughter trip. When I was an executive, for a large corporation, I was very intentional about my time
Yeah.
with my children. And that intention was very planned because my life in corporate was I traveled 90% of the time. Even when I was at home, I was on Sundays regrouping so that I could walk into the office on Monday morning and not, I had a plan and everything I knew what was going to be happening every minute of every day. And it was, I had meetings every hour on the hour. I had on my calendar literally to call my husband every day for 15 minutes that was blocked in order just to say I'm checking in, how are things going, and those types
My
of things.
goodness.
So I that intention really helped me understand that I wanted to spend quality time and be present when I was home with my children, and I scheduled very specific times with each one of them. And that I've carried forward even in starting my own business. And
Mm.
that is that I want to have time with my daughter. So we try to go away every spring somewhere new. And it's great quality time together. And I would not have learned that if I hadn't experienced that as a
Well, that's
corporate
right.
executive.
Yeah.
So, like, those things are really that intention has carried forward for me. So from that perspective, I feel great. So now going back to your network is critical. And
Mm.
how I've always looked at every job I've ever had, and that is I've always said I will work my way out of every position I've taken. So I put the processes in place and the procedures and upskilled the team members in order for me to be able to turn to my supervisor and say, hey, this department or whatever this project can be led by these other individuals, and I'm going to go try something new. And I was very lucky to work with a couple of organizations that said, okay, that's great, we want you to stay with us and we're going to put you in a different role. And I would just then do the same thing and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat. And that really worked well for me. And the only time I didn't do that was when my children were little. So strategically, I wanted to start a family. So I left a big job I had at a corporation, and I took a job that had a lot of flexibility, that allowed you to work from home, which was like unheard of
Yeah.
25 years ago. So I strategically took that job and said, I will get to know that job and do know that job for at least a year before I start my family. And so that I am great at this job and then I can start a family and I won't have any, stumbling or challenges. I'll be able to do that job with my eyes closed. And it was interesting because I never gave more than 40 hours a week at that job, which was not me at all. And they tried to promote me twice. And I was like, no,
Yeah.
can't take that job. Like I took this job specifically until my kids were I wanted to be home and I wanted to spend time with them and I thought was really important to me. And then when my kids went into elementary school, I did the same thing. I took a job that was a little bit more I had to travel more and it required a little bit more of me. But that was a strategic career move on my behalf. And then when they were in like 6th grade, 7th
Yeah.
grade,
Yeah.
kinda going into middle school, I'm like, "Okay, their life is they're gonna be who they are at this point. We've
Yes.
kind of formed them. Now they need guardrails," which was what my husband's great at. So I was like, "I'm gonna go get a job that requires me to work 60 hours a week and travel and all of those great things, and it'll allow me to really step back into what I would consider a pressuring career opportunity.
Mm.
And I did at that point. So I really strategically looked at my career just exactly through the lens that I might take to an organization. And then I've always said, like, I'll upskill myself. I personally make an investment in
Yeah, I
myself
agree.
every single year to upskill myself and stay relevant.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Karen, in terms of staying relevant, how important is it in today's world that we're in? Like, you mentioned before around, people that your role will be taken away from you if you haven't leveraged AI and you're not upskilled.
Yeah.
What are you seeing or what are you telling leaders and teams around relevancy?
I can't stress enough if you're not going to hire me to help come into the organization, I'll recommend 15 other resources, workshops, platforms. So many universities are offering courses. All of those, you can, gosh knows, I think you can probably go on YouTube and
Mm.
watch 1,000 different videos. Someone in every organization should be leading that effort. And if you're a small company, then that's why you're going to bring in someone like myself who can step in and out. Like as a contractor, my goal is never to be a part of your team. It's to step in,
Yeah,
get you to a place of good, then pull back, and
yeah,
then hopefully you call me when you're ready to go to part two, or we want to do something different, or whatever that specifically looks like. And then I can step back in. But, just like any leader, right? You need to know what you bring to the table as a leader, and you also need to know what you're not good at, or what your hot points are, so that you can step away from conversations and lean on other people that are complimenting you. So it's no different for me as a consultant. I want to step in and step out of your business and bring value where I feel
100%.
I best fit.
Yeah, 100%. Just on that, your
Mhm.
business is based on referrals, which is incredible, and obviously network is key and it's super important. You must work with companies where they have a sales team, they're driving new business. What's your like, what do you given that you're referral and you've never had to go out and sell and chase new business as such, what do you tell these people? Because I truly believe in energy, and it's like, money flows, and it's an energy like based exchange. I won't say transaction. Do you think it's the
Mhm.
same when it comes to business in terms of new business and sales and things like that? Or do you think that's naive to think that, it isn't?
No. No, I would tell you in a heartbeat, like my motto is if you're successful, I'm successful.
Mm,
And I don't believe knowledge is power. Like I believe transferring knowledge is so incredible to do. Share what you know with other people.
yeah,
Even if it means that, you know, you're not getting the business. It doesn't matter. Maybe long term you'll end up getting it based upon the fact that you want to help other individuals be successful,
mm,
whether that's in their organization or personally, and professionally. But those individuals will come back to you at some point looking for, that a great example is I used to work with someone, and him and I had coffee probably 2 years ago. And I had mentioned to him some things that I felt that where he was working, that they could do with AI integration. And he said, "We're not here, but I really appreciate it." And I followed up and I gave him a ton of ideas and said, like, here's some suggestions. Run and go with this. Be a star at your company. Tell them that these are your ideas. They don't have to be my ideas. And he came back to me today and was like, "Oh my gosh, we're actually gonna like do something with AI, and we could use your help." Um, I am a huge believer that, the people I've worked with, I treat with respect. I push people outside of their comfort zone. I ask hard questions to get people to think differently. I'm not someone that is just coming into the room and thinking that all my ideas are the right ideas. I really, really try to help them find what their moonshot idea is through facilitation practitioner work, and helping them kind of step out of their comfort
yeah,
zone. I think is important because that's when they're personally and professionally growing, but it's also when they're helping the organization get to that better place. And I believe every day you wake up to choose to be a leader, you have to lead yourself
I agree.
and you can lead other people. So that's a personal decision that you have to make every single day. And then you got to hold yourself accountable to that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's interesting. Accountability. Tell me a little bit about having your own business, and you sound like you're super intentional and accountable. What are you seeing? What do you like? What advice do you give businesses that you work with when it comes to, if they're scaling?
Mhm.
ensuring from an accountability perspective, or if they've plateaued as well, because I mean, there's a lot of businesses out there at the moment that are struggling just based on the world that we're in. And we're not going to go into the doomsday of just everything that's happening right now. I'm forever an optimist. I do think that it will pick up. I think it's going to be okay. I'm, wanting to share that with the audience because I think it's super important that if we start thinking it's going to be dire, it will become dire. So let's not allow ourselves to think that. What advice do you give businesses when it comes to accountability, on
I
the hard
think
days and then on the good days?
so. Accountability, like I said, it starts from an individual perspective. And my philosophy is one, and I teach accountability workshops, and I think training at a group level provides a shared vernacular. And that shared vernacular allows companies to move faster. And what I mean by that is that when you start to say things like, I hold myself accountable, and then the next level is peer to peer, right? If your peer is not holding up their end of the bargain on a project that you're working on, you should have the comfort level to go to that peer, not to the supervisor, and say, Jujubee is not, holding up her end of our project. It should come from you. And that's
Yeah.
out of respect for your colleagues that you want to be able to pull aside Jujubee and say, hey, Jujubee, listen, when we started this project, you were going to do X, Y, and
Mm,
Z, and I haven't seen you deliver that. Also come with the intention of, you don't know what's going on with Jujubee.
no,
What's happening with you, right? Like, you came out of the gate really strong. Is there anything I can do to provide you with the support so that we can collectively be successful in this project? And have that open dialogue and that conversation, because you don't know what is happening with where that individual is. So I believe that then accountability goes to the supervisor at that point. So there are stages of accountability. And when you can teach people how to have what some might consider a difficult conversation with their colleague because they don't feel it's their place, this is a skill that they should have in life. These
yeah,
are life skills. If did you have a college roommate and they left all of their shit in the kitchen sink, you should have been able to have a conversation. Hey, Jujubee,
yeah,
we're living in a common area together and we all need to pick up our pieces. It's no different. And if you haven't been taught that skill, because gosh knows at university they don't teach you these skills, then when you come into an organization, you need to be taught that, and that'll help you if you want to progress. That's upskilling yourself because it'll allow you later on to be able to manage other people. And you need to be able to have those conversations with great ease. And you need to do it from an authentic place and a place of care and concern with an individual. And I think when you can teach companies how to have a shared vernacular around accountability, it allows them to move so much faster, because then you don't have to say things like, "Hey, Jujubee, let's go and sit down in the office and have
yeah, I
a
agree.
conversation." And then it gets blown up into something that is so time consuming, and that's why supervisors avoid it, because they're trying to go fast. Instead, it allows you just to say, you know, these were the expectations, and this is my expectation. You're not meeting that expectation. Why don't you share with me what's happening
Right.
this week and when you're going to deliver that back to me? And
Yeah,
it allows it to go like this. And that's important in a business, because when we think we're going to have these big, long, drawn out conversations, they don't happen. And then all
no,
of a sudden, it's time for Jujubee's annual performance review. And I'm sitting there as the consultant on the other end with the supervisor who says to me, I think I need to let Jujubee go. And I'm like, what? Have you had any conversation with Jujubee? And they're like, no, it's just, everything's just going so
yeah,
fast, but
so
Jujubee
true.
knows. It's like Jujubee does not know.
No, it's
Like,
so true.
let's be clear. She does not know that this has gone sideways.
It's so true.
So yeah. So I'm a huge believer, upskill your team together, teach your team, especially around accountability and expectations, find common language, because that common language is important. And then even things as simple as, I'm going to give you feedback. Because that's probably the number one thing I'll hear from employees is, I never get any feedback. I
Yeah.
want feedback. And it's like, your supervisor just told you three things that he wanted done differently on that project. That was feedback. So teaching supervisors to say, hey, I'm going to give you some feedback so that people know this is feedback.
Yeah, feedback with
And
I call it feedback with positive intent, and the immediate feedback loops with
yeah,
positive intent. Karen, I've got a couple of final questions for you, and one of them is you're the breadwinner. You've always been the breadwinner of your family. Are you seeing more and more women are like, breadwinners just feels like such a, there's got to be another term for it, doesn't there, in terms of like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, what do you see when it comes to women in leadership these days in terms of, I mean, the juggle is still there, the juggle is still real. You've had this amazing husband by the sounds of things who, like, he's done all the home stuff. I mean, not that you haven't been at home, of course you have, because you said you've been very intentional with everything. Are you still seeing a lot of that now, or like or is it less common? What do you
no, I see it a lot. And I mentor a couple of young women just starting their family that are holding that financial responsibility
Yeah.
on their shoulders, and it is a very big one. Um, I also, I have quite a large group of women colleagues. I wouldn't say they're friends, they're colleagues that we lean on, that by being that individual that has been that financial stability in their household, it has allowed them to now make decisions where they've decided to step away from their marriages and feel like they can do that
Yeah.
because they've had successful careers and they have the money to be able to successfully do that, and or start an encore career. Or I just think for me, I tell my children this, like, you really are fortunate when you have choices,
Mm.
because that's what life is about. And I never personally, my parents had an incredible marriage. They were married for 60 plus years before my mother
Wow.
passed away. They were an incredible example. But I had older siblings that all got married, and I saw them all get divorced. And that is what drove that for me, was they would come home and back to the house where I was living, and I would see them with their children, or I'd see them saying, I'm going to need help, and da da da. And I remember just thinking to myself, that will never, ever be me, ever.
No.
And that was like the firecracker that just
Amazing.
kept me zooming forward in life, because I just thought, if something doesn't work out, I have to have the backup plan, and that backup plan has got to be me, because that's who's gonna take care of me. So I just refused to ever think that I could let up on my own career, because it wouldn't allow me the choices that I thought would be really important to me longer term. And look, I've been married 25 years, and I was with my husband for many years prior to getting married. I didn't change my name until about 12 years ago,
Amazing.
maybe 13 years ago, because I was so nervous that, like, again, something could happen and I didn't want to have to reinvent my
Yeah.
name, because I felt like people knew me from my name, and that was going to be so important. So, I think there's a backstory to every single one of us
Yeah, there is.
of what drives us, or why we've
Agreed.
picked the choices that we have, and that's how mine came together. And I don't think any of my sisters would even know that. They just think I'm super motivated, but thanks to them, that's why.
I love it. I love it. And then Karen, last but not least, just any final words, any piece of advice if you're stuck, if you're looking to, dare I say it, shift and shape what's next, what would be one piece of advice you would give somebody?
Um, my motto is choose courage over comfort. I think it's really important. I think the number one word people describe me as is quirky. And that's not a that can be negative and positive. So I I think that you just have to stay true to who you are, and you need to if you're comfortable with what's happening in your life, then there needs to be some change. And you need to just figure out one step at a time on what that potentially looks like and surround yourself with people that are going to push you out of that comfort zone. Like if you have friends that are yesing you all the time, go find some new friends.
Agree. I love it. It's very good. I love it. Karen, how do we find out more about you? Where do we go to find out more about Hazel's Gone Fishing? Where do we find more?
You can go I have a website. I made it, like, in one night when I went to a conference and people were like, "Do you have a website?" I was like, "No, but I will tomorrow morning." Um, I have a website, hazelsgonefishing.com, and you can always email me directly at Karen@hazelsgonefishing.com.
Perfect.
If you wanna do anything with people, have anything to do with people, I am your girl. And I'd love to help any organization step in for a short period of time and step back out.
Thank you, Karen. I have loved our conversation today. Wishing you a beautiful week ahead. Thank you so much.
You too, B. Thank you so much.
Thank you.